You're watching The Real with Mike. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's being safe and having a good night. We're going to talk about socialism. Is it yay? Is it nay? Is it good? Is it bad? Let's have a look. And we do have examples of socialism. So we should have a look. All these countries have turned out the same, so I'm not going to go over every single country that has tried socialism. Great Britain has tried socialism. It didn't work. They switched back to capitalism. So I'm only going to look at a couple. Cuba is going to be the first one. In Cuba, the state salary is on average $20 a month. It does vary a little bit depending on occupation, but the average is $20 a month. And even in Cuba, that's well below their poverty level. It's not a lot of money, even in Cuba. There's also an interesting stat. There's 11 million people in Cuba. A little bit more than that, actually. I think it's 11,300,000. But there's only 173,000 cars. So if you do the math on that, there's a lot of people in Cuba that don't have cars. And it's not because they're environmentalists and believe in green energy and don't want to buy cars, because most of the cars in Cuba are older models. They're not even close to the standards of the West vehicles as far as pollution, carbon. Cuba does actually have an impressive home ownership rate, and there is a reason for this. It's not because the Cubans have done so great and they're happy and working hard, and the houses are run down. They're beat up. Before '59, the homes weren't really looked after. They were state owned. If you live in a house but you don't own it, are you going to fix it up? Are you going to invest in it if the state owns the house? And more importantly, if your roof's leaking or your windows are leaking or your foundation is leaking, how fast do you think the government's going to get somebody out there to fix it for you? I don't think it'll be very fast. I think it'll get worse as you move farther into socialism. But things like that really do concern me. And I don't want to rely on any government for any essential aside from healthcare, because there's really not much you can do about that besides get the education yourself. I do have first aid, but that's a long ways from anything surgeons and doctors know. So they do have home ownership. Like I said, the houses are in disarray. Partly is because they were state owned, and like we just said, the state's not going to invest a bunch of money into something that you live in. It's the way it works. The more social programs a country has, clearly the larger government you need to have. If I have 10 people sitting around the table with me here, and there's probably a good chance they'll all be decent people and make smart choices and do the best for everybody involved. If you have 100 people sitting around the table, you might get one or two or a small group that their interests are in themselves and their back pockets, and their interests aren't in you. And I do think that plays a part in some of these social countries. Is the more people involved, the more chance of corruption. And it does happen. It's happened. Transportation is scarce. Food, internet. Due to disallocations caused by the state control of many industries, the government has had to provide and control rations of food. The government has to control and ration food. Think about that. Rice, sugar, matches. The government controls how much you get. Like I said, it's not. If you go to socialism, it's not going to be a free for all at the grocery store. You're going to get a card or a voucher or some sort of how much food you can get, because you're going to be limited to what you can get. Maybe beef will become a treat. Maybe you won't be able to have steak, maybe once every few months. And this is the parts that I really don't like, is they're going to control your home, your food, your wages. If they have control of those three things, we've lost democracy, because they control everything. And that is very scary. Even if Trudeau's has the best intentions and, isn't thinking anything vindictive, what about the next prime minister? Giving government that much power is an extremely bad idea, and I don't care who is in power. Don't give the government control over your food, your money, or your property. It needs to stay privatized. If everybody's making $20 a month or $50 a month, where's the drive for someone to do better? Where is it? Do you think someone's going to spend 5, 8 years, school, university, to become a doctor, to not be able to buy a home, to not really get ahead any more than someone like myself who didn't choose that path of education? History shows they don't. They lose that drive because they don't get that much farther ahead. Now let's look at Venezuela. Venezuela is also socialist, and it's rough in Venezuela. It's bad. Seven infants die in hospital every single day simply because they do not have basic medical care. And it's all because of this socialist free-for-all. It's sad. The worst part of this, Venezuela used to be a very rich country. It sits on a massive oil reserve. Massive. This all started back in the 90s when Chavez first came into power and started with all his great socialist policies, and they were great. The Venezuelans really loved this. Policies like redistribution of wealth, eliminating property rights. There you go. And that's one of the things that any social country will do, is take property rights. They have to, because they're not going to give you a bag of rice for nothing. And that's about what's going to happen. You're going to trade your house for a bag of rice. They have redistribution of wealth, eliminating property rights, high taxes, intervention in the economy, and that caused hyperinflation in Venezuela. They crashed. That led to a whopping 70% poverty rate. 70% of the country live below poverty. That's insane. Capitalism, I believe capitalism has cut poverty in the world by 50%. 50%. I believe that's what that stat was that Jordan Peterson threw out. Now let's look at Sweden. I do hear people talk about Sweden, a Nordic country, but Sweden may be a nice place to live, but there's some problems with saying it's a socialist country, because the government doesn't own the means to production in Sweden. They did at one point, but they don't today. So let's have a look at that and see what that brings us. So right off the hop, we need to be clear: it's not a socialist. Not today. It's not a socialist state. It's not a socialist country like old Bernie Sanders likes to claim it is. It just simply isn't. In the 1970s and 80s, Sweden did have a government that did resemble socialism. It had big government. Like I said, socialism needs big government, and it always leads to tyranny. They taxed and spent extremely heavily to support their social programs. Even with those high taxes, they did not generate enough money to support their social programs. And that's virtually impossible to support all these programs and not go farther into debt. Sooner or later, the barrel's empty. Then you start devaluating your dollar, and that's not good. That's the wrong way to go. Things were getting worse and worse. Increasing unemployment, food shortages leading to long lineups at the grocery stores, and really long lineups at the welfare office to get their welfare check. Finally, the people had enough. Sweden then reduced government control, cut public spending, and abolished government monopolies. That's where the corruption leads. When you get all the monopolies going, they eliminated the inheritance tax and started to sell state-owned businesses. They also lowered overall tax and reformed the pension system. After these policies changed and they opened up a free market like it is today, not socialist, it's a free market. Sweden did a 180 and started heading towards wealth again. Sweden has school choice, making schools compete with one another, and lots of privatization, including pensions. Sweden actually privatized their pensions. What this has done is the better Sweden does as a country, the better the pensions do. The worse the country does, the pensions decrease. And to a certain extent, I do agree with that. I think if you work for a company, you should have some kind of investment with them. There should be a backing from the country. I pay taxes, significant taxes, and when I retire and I get my old age pension, if it's still there, I agree with that. I do. But I would take it a step farther. I don't agree with a politician living in a state that he has run down and people have lost jobs and there's high poverty. I don't believe in a mayor, a premier, or a prime minister if it's the whole country, or president. I don't believe in them living high off the hog while his citizens are in poverty. He has nothing to lose. There's two things that should happen. One, I believe, I don't think politicians should make more than the median wage of the area that they oversee. If you're a mayor and your median income in that city is, say, $70,000, seems like a fair income for me. If you've run your city down with poor choices and poor policies and taxed your citizens, you should go down with them. And I believe that should be with the prime minister too, and premiers. If you run your province down, you make poor choices. Why are you living off the hog when your citizens are in poverty? That's not right. I would put that policy in place. I would also nationalize I would nationalize natural resources, and the profits from those natural resources would directly support the citizens of the country. They wouldn't go to private organizations and get kickbacks, and only the top of the chain get kickbacks off these. That's they lobby. They get lobbyists. And as soon as a leader takes money from a corporation or an extremely rich person, how can they look us in the face and say that they're actually working for us when someone else is paying them? I don't know how that even became legal. I don't understand the thought behind that. And whoever thought it would be a good idea, except for these lobbyists. hey, I'll donate this amount to you, but you got to give me a tax cut over here, or let me, drop this law over here so I can build this infrastructure over there because I'm going to make a few million off that. Then they're not working for us anymore. They're working for them. And that's part of the problem in this country. As far as socialism goes, it's not good. There isn't a country that has successfully implemented socialism and citizens have been happy. There's a reason why Cubans over so many years have tried to flee to the States. I don't think there's a country that has had socialism for a period of time and hasn't turned to tyranny either. Again, there's many reasons for this. One being the governments are so big, you're increasing your chances of getting some bad apples in there. That's just one reason. It's just one reason. The other, maybe power goes to their head, because in socialism, the government does have more power. And I don't want anybody dictating to me how much I can eat, how much I can't eat, and my income. I want to be in control of that. And I don't understand why there's some in this younger generation that think socialism is this great idea, because it's not. And I do think all this talk with the reset, and they've come out and said this in the reset, and I quote, they said, people will own nothing and they'll be happy. Really? Because I don't think I would be. Don't think I would be. I don't want their free food. I don't want to be reliant on anyone, particularly the government. It's not a smart choice for anybody. And I think that's where this is heading, into the reset. And I think the COVID-19 was the trigger. I think they're going to blame COVID-19, and they're going to say that we spent, and they have spent billions on this, and it's highly questionable how serious this disease is. So there's something going on, definitely. You have doctors, not just quack doctors, very well respected top virologists saying this virus doesn't warrant these draconian measures, and I talked about that in my last video. So I wanted to talk about the reset, but I wanted to hit socialism first. Like I said, if you can name a country that successfully implemented socialism, full-blown socialism, state owns the means to production, please leave it in the comments. I would love to look into it because I haven't found one. Please like, share, subscribe. Next one, we're going to talk about the reset. Have a good night, guys.